not running out any of the radiation dosage at all. And the number of lung cancer cases, which exist, of course, that don't smoke are just forgotten about by these societies, but they are very numerous. Anyway, there's nicotinic acid in that cigarette. Inevitably, on inhalation of tobacco, you will get some of this phenomena of face flush. But in view of the fact that a cigarette isn't pushing its smoke over the outside of the body, but on the inside, of course, you run it out internally.
Ron claimed that the nicotine in cigarettes would turn into nicotine acid, a component of vitamin B, which would drive out radiation from the body, including forms of cancer. He recommended cigarettes as a way for people to recover their health in the event of a nuclear war.
Ron's nubile teenage female messengers would follow him around with an ashtray and smokes, lighting a fresh cigarette at his chain-smoking lips as another was just butted in the ashtray.
There would be 6 messengers on duty when he was filming. One would hold his chair, one would hold a packet of cigarettes, and as soon as she saw that the cigarette he had was going out, would have to light another and give it to him. One held the ashtray, one held his pen, and so on. There were 6 of them round him. One of them was put on the humiliating rehabilitation project force, where she probably served for several months because she didn't get a chair there fast enough.
The Commodore's messengers.
They took care of everything for him. They dressed him, they got him ready for bed, they lit his cigarettes, they held his ashtray.
And most of the messengers are young girls, 13, 14, 15. They were an extension of his communication. So when somebody saw them on the ship or they came up to them, it was like you were talking to him.
On one occasion, Jerry Armstrong, who'd been sent on a shore errand, was visited by one of Hubbard's messengers.
This was Terry, who was later to be my wife, and she came to me where I was working, and she said, the Commodore wants to know, is it true that you went to the U.S. Embassy and applied for 30-some-odd visas? And I said, yes, sir, because that's how you respond to the messenger. And her next message was, the Commodore says you're a fucking asshole.
Nobody could say Ron was afraid of the needle. In his earlier years, Ron suffered a recurrent bout of venereal disease for which he took sulfur. He feared this had affected his libido in the most detrimental way, and later in his life he would inject himself with testosterone, recording in his affirmations,
Testosterone blends easily with your own hormones. Your glands already make plenty of needed testosterone, and by adding to that store, you make yourself very thrilling and sexy. Testosterone increases your sexual interest and activity. It makes erections easier and harder and makes your own joy more intense. Stilbestrol and 5 milligram dose makes you thrill more to music and color and makes you kinder. You have no fear of what any woman may think of your bed conduct. You know you are a master. You know that they will be thrilled. You can come many times without weariness. The act does not reduce your vitality or brain power at all. You can come several times and still write. Intercourse does not hurt your chest or make you sore. Your arms are strong and do not ache in the act. Your own pleasure is not dependent on the woman's. You are interested only in your own sexual pleasure. If she gets any at all, that's all right, but not vital. Many women are not capable of pleasure in sex, and anything adverse they say or do has no effect whatsoever upon your pleasure. Their bodies thrill you. If they repel you, it merely means they themselves are too frigid or prudish to be bothered with. They are unimportant in bed, except as they thrill you. Your sexual power is magnificent, and they know it. If they are afraid of it, that is their loss. You are not affected by it.
According to statements made by attorney Michael Flynn, Hubbard, until at least February of 1980, filled out fraudulent doctor's prescription for a large array of medical drugs for himself. It was shown in the Armstrong trial in Los Angeles in 1984 that Hubbard even had blank prescription slips from the U.S. Navy, one of which had a prescription for phenobarbital, a barbiturate hypnotic, written in Hubbard's handwriting.
One can only speculate what drugs Ron was taking when he came up with the following concept of body thetans and discussed his out-of-body visitations to other planets.
But although I don't think you'd have very much pleasure out of kissing a girl from Jupiter, that's a heavy gravity planet. If you stepped on the planet Jupiter in one of these meat bodies that you presently have, you would become a pancake promptly, you see. And what atmosphere it has lies in seas of liquid air and so on. We might say this is somewhat rigorous as an environment, not completely similar to Russia, but so you do get these various variations. And it's not all that horrifying, however. You find somebody running around planet Jupiter, he'd be built to withstand that climatic condition and that gravitic condition and so forth, and his legs might be a bit modified and his arms and that sort of thing, but he probably would look like an Eskimo.
I was up in the Van Allen belt. This is factual, and I don't know why they're scared of the Van Allen belt, because it's simply hot. You'd be surprised how warm space is.
Hubbard said he had discovered secrets of the universe so powerful they could only be heard by Scientologists who had spent hundreds of hours studying his programs. Anyone else would be struck dead by the knowledge. He told stories of how 75 million years ago an evil tyrant collected beings on other planets to be stored in volcanoes on Earth.
Boxed them up in boxes, threw them into space planes. DC-8 airplane is the exact copy of the space plane of that day. And no difference, except DC-8 had fans, propellers on it, and the space plane didn't.
The upper-level courses are called OT, which stands for Operating Thetan, Hubbard's word for the spirit. The OT levels are supposedly so powerful that you can die of pneumonia if you're exposed to them unprepared. It costs around £5,000 to take OT3, which contains Hubbard's cosmology. The Church has tried to keep this material secret, but former senior Scientologists in America have leaked it, and versions have been published. This is an outline of the story.
75 million years ago, this planet was called Tigyac. There were 90 planets in this sector called the Galactic Confederation.
This is part of the text of a Hubbard lecture.
They had elected a fellow by the name of Zemu to the supreme ruler, and they were about to unelect him. And he took the last moments he had in office to really goof the floof. Zemu decided to take radical measures to overcome the population problem. Beings were captured on other planets and flown to locations near 10 volcanoes or more on Earth. H-bombs were dropped on the volcanoes, destroying the bodies of the beings who, as Thetans, attached themselves to one another as clusters. A revolt followed of the loyal officers against Zemu. Zemu was locked up in an electronic mountain fortress and remains there still. Since that time, beings born on this planet have had clusters of Thetans attached to their bodies. OT3 can run out these clusters and cause them to leave us and reincarnate as individuals.
After hours of expensive auditing, you are rid of the body Thetans attached to you. You may then acquire psychic powers, move objects at a distance, and have out-of-body experiences. If you find you can't, then you must take the course again, for another £5,000.
In a letter to his third wife, Mary Sue, when Hubbard was in Las Palmas during 1967 at the inception of the Sea Org, he stated,
"I'm drinking lots of rum and popping pinks and grays."
Also at the Armstrong trial, where the affirmations were introduced, a letter by Hubbard to his first wife was revealed, the last sentence of which declared, "I do love you, even if I used to be an opium addict."
Do you use drugs in any way?
No, never. No drugs.
Hubbard was strongly against drugs for other people in later policy, although he himself consumed huge amounts of drugs and alcohol during most of his life. We also know that in the early days there is plenty of evidence that he experimented with auditing under the influence of drugs, speed for instance, and he used drugs to make his own children pliant and controllable, phenobarbital-laced chewing gum for instance. Later, he was most strongly against psychedelic drugs like marijuana and LSD, perhaps because they have very strong anti-hypnotic tendencies and have the potential to